Welcome to the April 10th, 2019 Planning Board meeting of the Town of Raymond. Planning Board will come to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mike D'Arcangelo.
Greg Foster.
Ed Kranich.
Kyle Bancroft.
Kevin Woodbury.
We have a quorum. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, anyone here has the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chair if you are unable to see or hear. The board works from a published agenda and will be considering tonight's items in the following order. Consideration of minutes, new business, a sketch plan review from Keystone Investment, and then followed by planner communications and adjournment. In each instance, the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinances or state law. All persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand at the microphone, state their name, address, and affiliation with the application. All persons speaking shall address the chairman. Any conversation must be held in abeyance until the board is formally adjourned. After the board votes on merits of each application, which there will be no votes made tonight on this application, because of the notice of decision may substantially affect any appeal rights, it is also a matter of courtesy. The board will prepare a written notice of their decision. Board asks that those attending the meeting with regards to a specific application not leave until the board has completed its discussion. Appeals from adverse decisions must be filed in the Superior Court or as provided by law within 45 days of the board's decision. Also, to be certain that you preserve your individual right to file any such appeal, you must be certain that the board's record evidences your appearing this evening in opposition and the basis for your opposition. Okay, we have a set of minutes from, let's see,
Almost a year ago.
May 9th, 2018. These are presented for approval tonight. Has everyone had a copy and an opportunity to review them?
Move to accept the minutes.
Second.
I think only 3 of us can vote on this.
Yes. There's only 3 of us who attended that meeting. Okay, all in favor? The minutes are approved unanimously. Okay, the next item is the new business, the sketch plan review from Keystone Investment.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Dustin Roma. I'm a civil engineer with DM Roma Consulting Engineers. Here tonight to discuss a sketch plan for a proposed subdivision amendment on a 2-acre property on Roosevelt Trail. The plan that we submitted and the one that we have in front of you tonight here on the board depicts 5 proposed dwelling units that would consist of 2 duplex structures and 1 single-family dwelling on the property. The existing conditions of the site are it is developed as a single-family residential lot currently. There is a mobile home on the property and a paved driveway that accesses it, along with a kind of a parking area off to the side and a garage structure. So we're proposing to utilize the same curb cut and expand the development area on the kind of the plateau area that's in the middle of the site to accommodate these additional dwellings. We did receive the review memorandum prepared by Jim Seymour, where he outlined the town's interpretation of the density requirements for this type of development. We do understand his methodology and the town's methodology in reviewing this, and would agree based on that information that the lot would support the 2 duplex buildings, and that the 5th single-family detached building that we are proposing would likely exceed the net residential density requirements of the lot. So we will be removing that single detached building. So the actual application we submit will have just the 2 duplex buildings on the property. We've designed the site so that we have a 24-foot wide paved drive aisle at the top where the parking spaces are located. We've also designed it with a kind of a hammerhead turnaround in between the 2 buildings with some increased radii on that, so that we can have, backing up of larger vehicles, fire apparatus, oil trucks, things like that could come in and back up in that space, and that won't be designated as a parking area. It'll be designated to be left open to be able to make those maneuvers and turn around, so that you don't have to back out onto Roosevelt Trail. The existing driveway that goes up to that developed area is paved now. It's about 12 feet wide, so we'll be widening that out. I think the recommendation from both the planner and the fire department was to widen that out to 20 feet. So we'll look to incorporate that into our design plans as well. We'll be constructing a new subsurface disposal system on the property. We anticipate a single leach bed will accommodate these 4 buildings. We'll have 2 septic tanks, 1 for each duplex, 1,500-gallon tanks that'll drain into a new leach field at the end of the new access drive in the upper area that we're showing on the plan. The leach field that we were showing on the kind of in the middle of the site on the lowland, that was going to be for that single family dwelling, so that would likely not be constructed as well. I believe the ordinance requires test pits for septic systems, but in this case we'll prepare a HHE 200 full design and submit that with our application for the board's review. The site is currently wooded around, everything except for the development area. The rest of the site is wooded. We intend to keep that area wooded from Roosevelt Trail up to the driveway area. So that's, the units sit about 170 feet or so back from the road. So there'll be a pretty substantial buffer of forest land that will remain as part of the development. That forest land could also serve as an adequate stormwater buffer for the stormwater that runs off the site. We're looking to kind of sheet flow the water over that parking area and kind of distribute it over that the steeper section of the embankment that's there. We'll evaluate that once we get rid of this little bit of snow that just came through here. We'll take a look at that area just to make sure there aren't any areas of potential erosion that would come about from sending stormwater over that embankment. And then the road itself, we're looking to kind of pitch that to the inside, and would likely incorporate a stone berm level spreader on the property that would take the runoff from the road and kind of distribute it out maybe for the last 50 feet of forested buffer before it gets to the roadway. There's an existing culvert on the driveway coming in that would be maintained. We'll likely have to widen that culvert out or lengthen it to accommodate the wider driveway there. We will contact the Maine DOT to discuss whether they will require a modified driveway entrance permit for this driveway, where it is going to 4 dwellings where it's just serving 1 today. It may be necessary for them to issue a modified driveway entrance permit for that change of use, but we'll include correspondence in your packet that either indicates that the existing driveway is satisfactory and it doesn't need any modification, or we'll include the permit once it's issued. It does have adequate site distance based on the town's measurements. The DOT generally requires pretty excessive site distances along Roosevelt Trail where it's an arterial corridor. So this driveway that exists there today would likely require some variances from what they would consider, if it were a new driveway entrance today, it may not necessarily meet all their requirements for that, but where it's existing and it's an existing lot of record, they would not generally deny any sort of extension of use of that for this little bit of extra traffic, but we'll be sure to clean that up for you when we submit our package. We understand, soil and erosion controls will be necessary during construction, so we'll provide that information to you, documenting methods for controlling that during construction and just timely stabilization of the site. I believe that, this being a sketch plan, I believe that kind of sums up what we have for information for now, and would love to hear your comments and any information you'd like to see us incorporate into the final plan, so that we can prepare that information for a future meeting. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
I think one question that I have before we can evaluate too much is, this going to be a condominium complex, or will it be an apartment complex?
The intent is for it to be rentals.
Okay, so
Yeah, so
it will be retained by one owner.
one owner, correct.
Should we have Mr. Seymour go through his memo?
I can.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, board. Going through this, obviously, we're very early in the process here, and of course, Dustin's already touched on the fact that we found small discrepancy in his computations for the number of units. It's kind of confusing in the village R zone. You have a density for single family, you have a density for duplex, and then you have a density for multiplex, which has to be more than 3 units in a building. So when you do the calculations, as Dustin's shown you already, you can either have one multiplex with 5 units, or you can have 2 duplexes. But that's about the only combination you can get to 4 or 5. Combinations of the other structures just doesn't get there. So I think they've agreed that they'll go to the 2 duplexes, which probably looks a little more presentable and streamlined anyway. Going through this, where it is a rental, and it'll go through both site plan and subdivision with, those 2 standards pretty much overlap each other anyway, but we have to go through the formal motion of both of those when we go through. So in your application, Dustin, you just have to touch base on, make sure you've got it all covered between the 2 requirements.
Okay.
I think he touched base on the driveway. If you will, in your packet, I think there was a plan of the original Cranberry Pond. That driveway that's on that lot was supposed to be a shared driveway for the lot to the right, but as you can see, the one to the right, been there a long time, has its own access. So to Dustin's point, he is correct that was the controlled access point for that development. So I think that probably all works in his behalf. It may be beneficial too, where he talked a little bit about the site distance, just to note it on the plan so we understand what it is and the speed limit through. Is that 50 through there?
I believe it is, yeah.
And where utilities will come off, I assume all the utilities come off currently off Roosevelt Trail. Where are those overhead or are those underground?
I believe they're overhead up into the site now, so.
Yeah, with the widening of the shoulder, we probably would want to see those underground.
Sure.
Probably wouldn't be too difficult with the widening. Again, looking at this from a standpoint of access, I know Wayne Jones is here this evening as well, but we just looked at it from the standpoint of what would be required for a mobile home or kind of small access to a condominium, and the minimum for 4 to 5 units is 20 feet, with some minor shoulders probably would be required. I think the fire inspector will probably speak more to the concerns about wanting reasonable access for fire trucks to be able to turn around and get up through there. Other things that I had just quickly, I don't know what they plan on doing for like waste removal, if they're gonna have a dumpster or something like that, but if you do, we will need to see something like that. And because this does have 4 units on it, it will be a named access way, so we'll have to come up with a name that will be approved by the town. Again, the chief will get into this a little bit with regards to fire protection. I think in talking with Dustin earlier today, they were leaning to putting sprinklers in the system, but a note will have to be right on the plan. And then the other thing would be parking standards as far as, what we require in the village residential. We have a little bit stricter, but I think with a small number that they'll be more than easily match that. The only other thing that we had some concern about is the slope going up that hill is fairly steep, but I don't think it's over 8%, is it?
Probably not. I mean, all it is, the biggest deficiency that I can see is that it doesn't really have that good, like, flat area transition at the beginning. It's
Yep.
kind of around, like you said, 8%, kind of just comes right down to the
Right.
road.
So if there's any way, again, that when you look at that design, if there's any way that you can maybe move some of that grades around the bottom so we get some transition, because I know when people probably have to get out of there, you know, you want to start in level ground rather than coming downhill, especially in the winter, especially like we have spring this year. But with that, I mean, I think we think it's a reasonable plan for the land. You know, we want to assist any way we can and answer any questions that you might have.
So based on the removal of the single family from the plan, will the duplexes remain in the same spot?
More or less, yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to see. It's a really light rectangle on the plans there, but the first duplex, or the one on the upper right, is more or less where the mobile home is now. So it's basically within the footprint that's currently the mobile home. They have a turnaround area for the driveway and then a garage structure. So it's in that same general footprint that the driveway and the residential dwelling will be. And then I believe the current leach field is more or less where the second building is going to go. That general area, I think, is where the leach field is, and then it remains flat out to the end of the property. So what we'll do is just build a new replacement leach field a little bit further out, and then just occupy that other flat area with the second building. And there is some room behind the buildings to grade out some little backyard area so that we can divert the drainage around the structures where we are, you know, right up against that hill. We'll make sure the grading plan clearly defines how the water is going to be coming down the hill and getting around the buildings.
You're going to use a well on the site, you're not going to extend the water main?
Yeah, we looked at if the current main, if it ends at, you know, Main Street intersection there, it's about 1,200 feet or so to get to this site. So it's a little far, I think, for this, unfortunately. So I think we would likely be looking at the sprinkler system option versus main extension.
Okay.
So each unit would have are these buildings going to be two-story?
Yeah, so there'll be two-story buildings, likely 2 bedrooms. We can provide plans for what the buildings will look like with our packages. We don't have a building plan yet, but the intent, yeah, there'd be the main floor living space, bedrooms, and a bathroom upstairs on the second story, full basements.
Any idea about how many square feet of living space per unit?
I mean, the way they're drawn up right now, they probably have about 1,400 square feet of living space, maybe. But it's probably going to be in that 1,150 to 1,300, somewhere in there.
So just to remind the board at this time, you know, this is only for sketch plans, so there really is no formal motion you need to make this evening, other than you do feel, give your opinion or straw poll or whatever that you feel it's a decent plan, and, we can move forward with it to public hearing when the appropriate materials are submitted for staff review.
Yeah, that's, in my opinion, it is a reasonable plan that, can be made to work out once we see additional details, and everyone else has the same.
Yeah, I would agree. Seems like it's got nice spacing for outdoor play areas and that sort of thing, that potential. It's got enough room for that kind of thing, depending on if it's families or not.
Yeah, we don't anticipate snow storage to be a problem. There's plenty of room to kind of push snow off the end of the hill there. So we've got, with the units on one side, open on the other, it helps with snow removal because you can kind of push to one side without blocking in any parking spaces or anything like that.
Yeah, Dustin, the only thing that might be, you might want to think about too, is maybe a light either at the entrance or, somewhere up near the top of the hill, just for identifying that security and how to see things get in there, especially maybe at the entrance. When you're doing the road, maybe just drop a private light in there or something. They're probably gonna have something on the buildings.
Yeah,
Wall
yeah,
packs or
yeah. They'll
something.
have wall packs on the buildings that'll illuminate all the parking
Yeah.
spaces and off to the side. There'll be some lights in the back too, just to kind of illuminate that space. The plans that we bring in will show if there's the deck locations. We'll add those. Yeah, I guess it would be good to know. I mean, I don't know if the town has specific policies about streetlights and what they'd like to see. I mean, are we talking just a pole-mounted light, or is it something, that you'd
Well,
like more?
I don't know if you've got poles on that side or not, but it could just be a small, private pole LED light or something, just to shed some light on the entrance of it.
Yeah, electric is on that side of
Yeah.
the street.
So, if you do have a pole there, or you're forced to drop a pole, you could put one on the pole. If not, just, run one in just over the property line and just put a private pole in.
Yep, okay. Yeah, I think if the power is on our side, then, yeah, we'll look to see if maybe we can put one on an adjacent one. If it's on the other side, then we'll need to come overhead anyway and put some
Right.
new poles, so,
No, it's definitely on your side.
yeah, I think you're right.
Will your final plan show common area that, open space or grass where people can use?
Yep, yeah, we'll include a grading plan, which will kind of show the finished areas that will be developed as lawn. So that'll all be shown on the plans.
And looking at this, like you said, they've got some room behind going on the uphill side, but when they do that leach field, it's just gonna be a natural area to nice and level and grass.
Are there ADA requirements for apartments in this number of units?
ADA is always a tough one to me on these residential type units because it's one of those things, a lot of times you don't see them. And I think if you could interpret the code one way to say that, it's an accessible space. But I don't know that it's necessary to have a dedicated handicap parking space for a residential dwelling.
Yep.
I don't believe it is, but.
I think if it had any kind of federal or assistance, it probably would be required. If it's strictly private, then I don't believe it would. It may be beneficial maybe just to put one space in there, I mean.
It's just
Or
hard
a
because then
ramp
if someone
sidewalk.
parks
Just-
there,
yeah,
it's
or just-
technically illegal.
Or just have some ways so at least they can, like you said, access into the home or something. If
Yeah.
It seems like any sidewalk you see these days is made with at least one handicap.
Yeah. Have a curb opening or some means to get in it, just in case somebody does need to.
Yeah, I mean, each building will have a step to get into it. We weren't intending to build ramps
Yeah.
inside any of the buildings, but they will at least probably have 2 steps in front of each door.
But again, if somebody does need ADA compliance, obviously they can work through Scott and have a ramp put in.
Yeah, no, as long as there's access from the parking lot to, I assume there'd be a sidewalk in front of the buildings.
Yeah, there'll be walkways in front of the parking areas to get into the dwellings, yeah.
Maybe beneficial just when you're moving in and out too.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know, it seems like you know what to do next, so. I don't have any more questions. Does anyone else have anything they want to bring up?
Is it customary for the board to decide if they want to do a site walk or not at this level, or is it, do you usually do them or not do
Again,
them?
it would make sense probably to do that now.
Yeah, I think it would be good to have a site walk on this.
We could do it, right now, we have no applications for May. So we could either schedule it for sometime in May, or we could do it at, if it works for the board, we could do it before the meeting, before the next meeting. Say like 6, it's fairly, not, well,
Yeah.
6 or something like that. I mean, it's close off 302, it's not too far away.
Okay, so are you saying we won't have a meeting in May?
Right now, we have nothing on the agenda for May.
And tomorrow, no, today was the
Today's-
deadline.
today's the
Today's the
deadline.
deadline, so you haven't
There's nothing
submitted
coming.
the
No,
Including this,
next step?
including this application.
right, but this would have to be submitted today for full
Okay.
site plan and everything, so, so right now you have no meeting for May.
Okay.
Or you could choose a weekend or whatever you want to do. I mean, this one is pretty, I think it's be a pretty quick site walk.
Yeah, it's a 10-minute.
I think you could do a
Drive up and look around.
I think you could do a 6 o'clock before the meeting and have plenty of time to get
Yeah.
here.
No, I agree. I think that would be the best way to proceed. Anyone else have any objection or?
Sounds like a good plan to me.
Okay, so then, before the next meeting, we'll have a site walk, 6 o'clock. It looks like June will be the next meeting.
Yes.
You'll have your
Yep.
application completed by then. And that's it. Do we have any other items anyone wishes to bring up?
I think he knows his list of things he has to do, and obviously, you know, anything with sprinklers or anything like that, you have Wayne as a resource as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Nope, not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet. You've got a couple things. You've got a findings of fact. I think there's only like 3 of you that can actually sign that. That was for Cedar Lane, one that's been kicking around for about 2 years, and they are finally at the point where they've got all their agreements and ready to have the plan signed, but knowing that, somehow this kind of slipped through the cracks, so we just want to make sure we get the findings signed for this one. So if you could do that, you have time to read through that, sign it before you leave this evening, that would be great. Other than that, like I said, we have no other applications forthcoming. We know of some other items that people are working on, but nothing's been submitted as of yet. And just, you know, all the items have gone through Board of Selectmen for ordinance changes, and they gotta go through one more legal review. With that said, again, anytime you're going through these ordinances, if you see something that looks, you don't understand, or is not clear, or seems outdated, please just point it out to either Scott or myself, and we'll take a look at it to see, you know, if there's something that needs to be addressed, or if we can add clarity to it. One of the things that we've already kind of found, we have an old subdivision which is being constructed now. One of the things that we've seen is actually in the road standards, it only calls for a total pavement width, depth of 2.5 inches. Most of the roads we see today are 3 or 3.5 inches. So kind of talked with Public Works, and, you know, thinking that we may want to take a look at that next round as far as beefing up some of the road pavement, some of our designs.
2.5 isn't too much.
Well, that and the pavement mix changed too. Before you had type B, type C, now you're into the super pave, which is a whole different mix, and so you really want that extra thickness, so you have less asphalt, so. That'd just be something that we've kind of picked out, but again, anytime you have anything, just point it out, and, you know, we'll.
Well, speaking of that, the, under the village, I can see where the confusion came from
Yep.
for their plan. because it says for multifamily dwelling, 40,000 square feet for the first 2 units on the lot.
Right.
I think that's where the confusion came.
Yeah, and then you
wanna-
gotta go to the definitions, and when you go to the definitions, you know, it points out that multifamily must be 3 or more dwellings in it. So, yeah, the verbiage is not great
Yeah, I'm
there.
just wondering, would it be harmful to change that language to the first 2 units in the building?
I think the question I would even have going even deeper than that is why do you have, I get single family, but when you start getting to duplexes and multiplex, does it really make a difference? Shouldn't it just be density per dwelling unit for more than a single family?
Yeah, I think that's a,
You know, I think that
I
may be
agree.
something we want to look at too, just because we haven't seen, I don't know, we haven't done a multifamily here since I've been here in 7 or 8 years. We have not done, we've done duplexes, and you know, the multifamily I think gets into, and Chief's here too, probably gets you another whole realm of code, right? As far as sprinklers and things like that, so
Yeah, fine.
people tend to avoid those. I mean, we require sprinklers no matter what, pretty much when it hits a subdivision phase. But I just think it'd be streamlined the whole process if you just say, single family's this, duplex or multifamily is this per dwelling unit. If it's 15,000 square feet, or 20,000, be what it is. But it just seems weird that you'd break it down into 3 different components like that. And to your point, on the lot, it does kind of confuse you a little bit. I'm sure back whenever that was added, it made sense, but time's moved on now, and, you know, might be warranted to take a look at all the multifamily densities and see how it's worded, verbed out, however we want to say it. Matter of fact, is village the only one that allows multi? Maybe just the village the only one that allows it.
I think it, well, I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure that is the only one. I know it's not in Shoreline.
So I mean, it wouldn't be like you're changing a lot of zones, it may be just the village that you have to look at for that. My guess is that it was probably robbed language from another section of the ordinance. Cut and pasted in there somehow, and just that verbiage probably never got cleaned up. Yeah, the only one I see it, the only one district I see for multiplex is village.
It makes sense. That's what they would want to do anyway, keep it concentrated.
Yeah, I would think they'd want to keep the multiplex concentrated in the village.
so I'm sure at some point, there was a lot of thought involved, and it made sense, but I agree, it doesn't make sense to me at least, and so, since we have some ordinances already going through the process, can we sneak this one in? Does the board want to consider doing that?
Well, it'd be good, it couldn't go through this year, it would go through 2020, but it's something definitely we can put on our agenda going forward. Like, we kind of try to keep a short list as we get into the ordinance season, which usually comes around right after Christmas. We start working on the new ordinances for the following year, so it's something that we can definitely keep in mind, especially now that we're starting to see development, and these types of things are probably going to be a little more affordable for developers undertaking, so we're probably going to be seeing a few more of these weird situations, so we can learn from them. That's all I have at this point. I don't think we will have to, at that June meeting is usually the annual when we start doing the chair and vice chair, right?
Elections, yes.
Elections, so. So Ed, you could be full-time in June. No, thanks.
And Bob is in Florida enjoying the warmth.
Well, he's gonna
Back
pay.
for a month.
Second. That's all I have.
Okay, so if no one else has any other
Move to adjourn.
All right,
Second?
all in favor? Unanimous.